the city of Sidon never stopped breathing. It only learned to whisper. Beneath its streets, under layers of sand and silence, archaeologists unearthed tombs from nearly 4,000 years ago. The bones they found weren't just remains, they were memory. Buried children wrapped in jars, their heads facing west. Adults laid in fetal position as if returning to Earth the way they came into it. This wasn't just burial. It was belief, ritual, identity, frozen in time. When scientists lifted DNA from these bones, they expected gaps, erosion, degradation. But what emerged was shockingly intact, and even more shocking in what it revealed. The ancient Canaanites had spoken, not in stone, not in scroll, but in code. Their genome matched with uncanny precision the DNA of modern-day Lebanese people. Not somewhat, not statistically insignificant. Over 90% of the genome was the same. Let that settle. After 4,000 years of war, empire, religion, and migration, the blood remained nearly untouched. This wasn't a story of survival. It was a story of unbroken continuity. And that continuity lives today in the bodies of millions, walking through Beirut, working in Tripoli, hiking the hills of the Chuf, unaware that every cell in their blood hums the same tune their ancestors sang beneath Sidon's soil. This isn't poetic license. It's data. The scientists didn't just say similar. They said preserved. They found the Canaanite fingerprint in the DNA of people alive today. A direct link so rare in global population genetics, it stunned the researchers themselves. Because in most places, where Bronze Age bones are tested, you find fragments, influences, echoes. But in Lebanon, the echo was so clear, it was as if the voice never stopped speaking. The Canaanites, a people erased by history, obliterated in name and empire, were never truly gone. They simply evolved into a new word, Lebanese. You can change a language. You can bury a city. You can conquer a land 1,000 times. But blood doesn't lie. And in this case, it refused to forget. In the genome, we don't just find ancestry. We find defiance. And Sidon. Sidon is not a ruin. It's a mirror. Lebanon has never been silent, not in war, not in peace, not even underground. In the shifting sands of time, empires collapsed and religions rose, but the thread that tied its people to their ancient beginnings never snapped. It stretched, it thinned, it almost disappeared beneath the noise of conquest, but it never broke. Scientists didn't expect to find such continuity. They approached Lebanon like any other land shaped by the chaos of history, expecting admixture, replacement, erasure. But what they found was the opposite. Beneath modern skin, beneath names and flags, a voice kept repeating the same genetic verse, unchanged for nearly 4 millennia. The cities changed. The gods changed. But the DNA? It stayed. From the Bronze Age Canaanites to the citizens of modern Beirut, over 90% of genetic material tells a story not of upheaval, but of preservation. This isn't evolution by replacement, it's endurance by inheritance. This kind of stability is so rare in the world of genetics, it's almost mythological. Most nations are built on layers of migrations and collapses, one wave washing over another. But Lebanon resisted the tide, like a reef holding its shape while the sea rages above. It's not that no one came. The world passed through Lebanon like a revolving door, merchants, priests, conquerors, exiles. But the people who lived there didn't vanish. They absorbed, they adapted, but they remained who they were. This isn't about purity. It's about resilience, a kind of genetic quietness that withstood centuries of noise. The Ottoman Empire taxed them. The French named their borders. The Crusaders died on their soil. But through it all, the genome whispered the same story, one that began before borders, before empires, before even the word Lebanon existed. And that story still lives in the blood of fishermen in Tyre, in schoolchildren in Zal, in farmers planting olives, where their ancestors once carved temples. In a world obsessed with change, Lebanon's DNA offers something almost subversive, continuity. Not frozen in time, but flowing through it. What this tells us is staggering. That while history books were rewritten by the powerful, the real history, the human story, was carried silently inside ordinary people. No flags, no kings, just code, quiet, enduring, unbroken. Lebanon has worn the boots of every empire, but none of them left footprints in its blood. Rome built cities across its coast. Byzantium etched its faith into its hills. The Crusaders bled into its valleys, and the Ottomans governed its skies for 4 centuries. But when scientists searched the genome for evidence of these conquests, they found almost nothing. It's one of the greatest paradoxes of Lebanese history. A land endlessly occupied, and yet, genetically, barely touched. At the heart of this mystery lies a mass grave in Sidon. Crusader knights buried in haste, their bones mixed with animals, their deaths sudden and brutal. Geneticists sequenced their DNA, hoping to find a trace of European ancestry in modern Lebanese populations. What they found was startling: complete absence. The invaders had died, but their blood had not spread. This wasn't an isolated case. Time after time, across studies, the pattern repeated. Whether it was Latin-speaking Romans or Turkish-speaking Ottomans, their cultural impact was undeniable, their genetic impact minimal. Why? Because conquests rarely meant integration. They meant rule. Walls were built between rulers and ruled, in law, in language, in marriage. Power changed hands, but people stayed where they were, marrying among their own, passing on their ancestry like a sealed letter from one generation to the next. Empires might have redrawn maps, renamed towns, rewritten laws, but they could not rewrite the genome. Even more remarkable is the silence left behind. In other parts of the world, conquerors reshaped gene pools. In Britain, the Anglo-Saxons transformed the native genome. In South Asia, Central Asian incursions left lasting imprints. But Lebanon remained uniquely resistant. Its DNA didn't absorb the conquerors. It outlasted them. Imagine a mountain that's been carved, painted, climbed, and claimed, but whose stone never changed. That's what the Lebanese genome is. It's not blank. It's resilient. And perhaps that's the quiet genius of this land. While the world obsessed over who ruled it, Lebanon focused on surviving them. This isn't to say outside blood never entered. It did in droplets, not waves. Fleeting traces, quickly diluted. The genome held its ground like a language that refused translation. Because the people didn't just witness history. They endured it. And in that endurance, there is something profoundly powerful. A land so often conquered that forgot how to be conquered. Not every strand in the Lebanese genome was born on its soil. Some arrived quietly, not by sword or siege, but by trade, wind, and fate. Roughly 7% of the modern Lebanese genome tells a story that doesn't begin in the Levant. It carries markers that point east, to the open grasslands of the Eurasian steppe and the highlands of ancient Iran. But unlike the sweeping genetic waves that change the face of Europe or Central Asia, these threads are delicate, subtle, hidden in the corners of the double helix, like a whispered memory. They arrived not as floods, but as veins of influence, meandering, interlacing, and then settling. The timing of their entrance is elusive. Maybe it was during the Achaemenid Empire, when Persian roads stitched together continents. Maybe through Hellenistic trade, as Macedonian coins passed hands in Phoenician ports. Or perhaps even earlier, in moments that left no records, only echoes. But what's clear is this. These genetic signals, though small in volume, are profound in meaning. They reveal a Lebanon that was never isolated, always watching the horizon, always listening to the footsteps of travelers. And yet, even with this infusion of distant ancestry, the Lebanese genome remained itself. These Eastern inputs didn't replace the core, they folded into it, like threads of color added to a tapestry that was already woven. This minor influx is not a contradiction. It's a signature of openness without surrender, integration without erasure. It reflects a truth too often forgotten, that resilience and exchange are not enemies. They are partners. These traces, whether they came from Zoroastrian merchants or steppe-born migrants, now live beside Canaanite markers, side by side in the blood of people who move through modern cities unaware that their very cells are archives of silent crossings. No monuments mark these migrations. No kings claimed these connections. But the genome recorded them anyway in full. And while 93% of the Lebanese genetic story is homegrown, this 7% is a reminder that even the most enduring lineages are never truly alone. Lebanon wears many names, sects, tribes, confessions, and flags, but beneath it all, one language never changes: the language of inheritance. From the outside, it seems divided: Maronites in the mountains, Sunnis in the ports, Shias in the south, Druze in the hills. Four faiths, dozens of identities. And for generations, these boundaries have shaped not just culture, but marriage, memory, and map. But when scientists stepped past the politics and into the genome, they found a truth no census ever revealed. The divisions stop at the skin. Underneath, the blood speaks with one voice. Across sectarian lines, the Lebanese genome shows near total overlap. Whether Christian or Muslim, rural or urban, old family or new, the shared ancestry runs deep, consistent, and strikingly unified. It's not just similarity, it's genetic kinship. Yes, preferential marriage within communities has created subtle shifts, minor variances in specific lineages. But these are edges on the same page, not separate stories. The deeper patterns are identical. This isn't just science. It's a mirror. Because what DNA reveals is something few are ready to admit: that the fiercest divisions in Lebanon were never biological. They were built, reinforced over time by trauma, theology, and foreign manipulation, but not by nature. No genome recognizes denomination. No haplogroup kneels in prayer. The molecules don't choose sides. This shared ancestry stretches back millennia, beyond the rise of Islam, before the birth of Christianity, to a time when the people of this land weren't labeled by doctrine, but by geography and blood. And that blood has never stopped flowing through every family tree. Braided, continuous, uninterrupted. It carries no scripture, no ideology, only memory. So while history painted lines across the land, and generations were taught to see difference, the body quietly kept its own truth alive. Lebanon is not a mosaic of strangers. It is a single thread of identity, knotted in places, tangled in others, but never truly cut. And perhaps, in a time where difference is currency and division is power, there's something radical in what the genome tells us: that unity is not something we must create, it's something we've already inherited. The Lebanese identity doesn't end at the Mediterranean. It begins there and then drifts. Today, there are more people of Lebanese descent living outside Lebanon than within it. They speak Portuguese in Sao Paulo, French in Marseille, English in Ottawa, Arabic in West Africa. But in the hidden machinery of their cells, they carry something far older than any language. Because when their DNA is tested, the results don't point to exile, they point to home. Across continents and generations, the genetic continuity is astonishing. Diaspora Lebanese, whether 3 blocks from the sea or 3 oceans away, still carry the same ancient signals found in the remains of Bronze Age Sidon, the same markers that whisper of Canaanite ancestors, the same threads untouched by conquest. This isn't nostalgia. It's scientific fact. While borders shifted and families fled, during famine, during war, during silence, the genome remained loyal. It didn't scatter. It stretched. And in doing so, it became a kind of bridge, connecting a child born in Melbourne to a fisherman buried 3,700 years ago by the sea. Not by story, but by sequence. There's a quiet power in that. A reminder that identity isn't just inherited through language or tradition. Sometimes it's embedded deeper, in the very code of life, passed silently, stubbornly, across centuries. What makes this even more profound is that many members of the diaspora never return. They live entire lives abroad. They raise families who speak no Arabic, who know little of the Levant. And yet, their DNA doesn't forget. Some families discover it through genetic tests, a surprise in their ancestry breakdown. Others feel it in ways they can't explain, a longing, a recognition, a pull. And in that, Lebanon becomes more than a place. It becomes a memory written into the body. Even the rare mutations found in Lebanese lineages, from immunity-related alleles to founder effects in rural communities, show up in distant descendants. They survive not because of proximity, but because of continuity. So while the diaspora lives under other flags and celebrates other holidays, it still tells the same ancient story, just in a different accent. This is not a fracture. It's an expansion. And perhaps, in an age where roots feel shallow and displacement defines the human story, the Lebanese genome offers something rare, a reminder that distance doesn't erase belonging. Sometimes it proves it. Tucked between olive groves and terraced hills lies Korah, a district steeped in ritual, language, and liturgy. Here, church bells echo across stone villages, and Greek Orthodox identity runs deep. For centuries, the people of Korah have traced their spiritual lineage eastward, to Byzantium, to Hellenic tradition, to a faith older than nations. But when scientists examined their DNA, something unexpected emerged. The genetic trail didn't point to Greece. It didn't lead to the Aegean or Peloponnesian Isles, nor did it mirror the profile of mainland Greeks. Instead, it drew a quiet line inland, through ancient Anatolia, past forgotten migration corridors, to populations that never called Greece home at all. This wasn't a contradiction. It was a revelation. Korah, despite its Greek-speaking churches and Byzantine rituals, had never been genetically Greek. Its people had preserved a cultural identity, not a bloodline, and in that, they revealed something rare, the power of memory to live independently from biology. In most parts of the world, genetic and cultural histories walk hand in hand. But in Korah, they pass each other like strangers. The songs are in Greek. The prayers follow Eastern Orthodoxy. But the DNA is distinctly Levantine, with ancient Anatolian influences, not Aegean ones. How did this happen? One possibility lies in centuries-old religious migrations. When the Byzantine Empire crumbled and the Levant became a patchwork of rulers and regimes, some communities adopted Greek Orthodox Christianity, not through mass migration, but through religious transformation. Faith arrived, not with ships, but with scripture. Over time, the rituals became heritage. The architecture followed, but the people themselves remained rooted in the soil, unchanged in blood. And when geneticists plotted their markers using PCA and haplogroup analysis, the results were clear. These villagers shared far more with local populations than with any Greek source. This doesn't diminish their identity. It enriches it, because what Korah represents is something many have forgotten. That identity isn't always inherited through chromosomes. Sometimes it's carried by choice, by devotion, by ritual repetition. And in a world obsessed with genetic purity, Korah offers a quieter truth. That culture can be adopted, lived, and passed on without ever altering the genome. It's a story not of imposture, but of integration, of belief strong enough to shape architecture, family, rhythm, and belonging without rewriting the body. In Lebanon, language is both a bridge and a mask. Step into a cafe in Beirut, and you might hear a single conversation drift between Arabic, French, and English, all within one breath. Walk through a mountain village, and prayers may echo in Syriac or Aramaic, tongues older than most alphabets still spoken today. But as deep as these languages run, they don't tell the whole story, because beneath the phrases and phonetics lies something far older, a version of identity no grammar can capture, the genome. While Lebanon's cultural fabric has shifted countless times, from Phoenician script to Roman Latin, from Ottoman Turkish to modern multilingualism, the core ancestry has remained anchored. Language has changed. People have not, and that distinction matters. For centuries, it was assumed that speech revealed origin, that the way a people spoke was the truest sign of who they were. But DNA tells a different story, one that travels in silence, unaffected by empire or alphabet. In Lebanon, genetic continuity has outlived every linguistic revolution. The people who once carved Canaanite symbols into stone now speak French in business meetings. The descendants of ancient highland farmers now read the Quran in classical Arabic. Yet their genome, from father to daughter, from grandmother to grandson, carries the same signature it did 4,000 years ago. That's not a rejection of language. It's a redefinition of its place. Because identity here isn't built only on what is spoken, but on what is remembered at a cellular level. Even when Aramaic was pushed to the margins, it left its rhythm in the chants of monasteries. Even when colonial tongues tried to overwrite native dialects, they couldn't reach the chromosomes. And so, Lebanon became a nation of layered voices, but single ancestry. The illusion of difference can be powerful. Accents change perceptions. Scripts shape boundaries. But deep down, the genome doesn't flinch. It doesn't adapt to colonialism. It doesn't mimic invaders. It simply endures. In this way, language becomes a costume, one that can be worn, discarded, or revived, while DNA remains the skeleton beneath it all. And perhaps that's the most profound lesson here, that the Lebanese story is not bound to any one tongue. It was never meant to be translated. It was meant to be inherited. Not every legacy is carved into monuments. Some are written so small, so hidden, that they pass through generations unseen until science catches up with memory. In Lebanon, the most enduring record of its past isn't buried in temples or stored in archives. It lives in the blueprint of its people, folded deep inside the double helix, encoded in silence. Geneticists have begun to map that silence. What they're finding is not just ancestry, but revelation. In villages where cousin marriage was once a shield, a way to protect land, loyalty, and lineage, the genome holds both tradition and its consequences. These tightly knit communities, especially in rural districts and among specific sects, preserved more than heritage. They preserve mutations, rare ones, mutations unseen in global databases, but common in families where the bloodlines loop back on themselves. These aren't statistical footnotes. They're medical puzzles, unraveled only because someone looked closely enough. Variants in genes like STAT1, USH2A, and IFIH1, buried for generations, now reveal how immunity functions, how blindness develops, how the body defends or collapses. In a paradox only genetics can explain, what once endangered children may now help save lives. Because Lebanon's legacy isn't just in who it came from, it's in what it can teach. Each mutation tells a story. Some link modern families in Amchit to ancient maternal lines shared with Mediterranean traders. Others trace back to founder effects, where a single mutation, carried quietly, shaped the health of hundreds. Even the BRCA variants that elevate cancer risk have a tale to tell. Some originated in specific regions of the Levant, passing through communities that never knew the danger, but carried it anyway. And yet, the story here is not fear. It's clarity. More Lebanese families today are choosing genetic counseling before marriage. Universities are building biobanks. Doctors are learning that the past isn't just historical, it's clinical. The genome, once a mystery, is becoming a map, one that can lead not only to identity, but to solutions. What began as a quiet inheritance is now a spotlight, illuminating ancient choices, revealing patterns once hidden, and offering knowledge that could shape the future. This isn't just data, it's destiny, reshaped by awareness. Because in Lebanon, the genome doesn't just carry history, it carries hope.